Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers, for 40 in February.
I love that in my heart so much, Erika.
You know, you were
So,
protesting it before, but I feel like I
no,
haven't done that enough this month, and we only have a couple more episodes to go. So,
yeah,
you
and
know,
we haven't even done anything on Charles Fort himself yet, but I know that we'll do an episode somewhere down the line of just famous researchers. We'll do like a series on that. I think that would be good, and we can go into Charles Fort then. But the key is 40 in times. That was his magazine legacy that came from him, and some even call it Fortiana, which is crazy. Which
Fortiana.
I think that's just being fancy.
Yeah, okay. That was my
Oh,
fancy trying to do that. I think
oh
we
my
should
gosh, we
do an
have been,
episode on
huh?
him. And that would be cool. But you know what I'm excited about? You're about to, oh my gosh, about what we're going to talk about. But I realized we have done a lot of travel recently.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we
You
haven't done a
just got back.
traveling episode
Yeah, you just
in
got back,
forever.
right?
Yeah, I literally just got back from Mad Monster, which was just after MegaCon, where we all got MegaCon crud and almost died. And that episode came out where we only salvaged one of the two episodes we recorded there, and technically a third. And
We didn't even
Robert, we love
salvage it
you.
well because when we
Yeah,
tried to salvage it, it salvaged. Anyway, I don't think we
yeah,
should talk about it anymore. We need to
yeah,
just
yeah,
move
yeah.
on. Moving
Robert, we
on.
love you. Anyway, yeah, no, and then Mad Monster was a blast. We had a lot of fun. We had a couple. One of our Patreons showed up, and I sent you guys the video of it,
Yes.
which I thought was fun. And then a lot of people who know us from Tampa Jay and Chris the Girl, and a lot of people who know us from other things. But he was a Patreon who had found us last year at Mad Monster, so that's where he started listening to us.
Look at
And
the circle of life there, travelers.
It's how it goes. And then we've
So,
got literally like a couple days on the ground, and then we're back up traveling again.
so you and Carrie are going to be at Pensacon.
Yes.
Unfortunately, me and Beau and Callie and stuff won't be there, but you'll be at Pensacon. You'll be up in the Artist Alley area.
Which
We'll
is
make
up
sure
in the
we,
rafters
yeah,
in that place, which is
fun table. And then you're going to be at the Frogman Festival
like a week or
after
two
that.
after. Yeah. I think we got a little bit of time to prepare and restock. We sold out of a bunch of prints, so we're having to get more. That's one of the tasks this week on our few days on the ground is to get restock. We're also getting more books because we're out of a few of those. And it's fun. And Beau, we sold some of your books while we were there. We sold some Erika books that he's going to hunt you down and have you sign.
That's
So
fine. I can be hunted down at any. We've got events. We're going to be at the Georgia Bigfoot Festival. So if you have my book and it is of yet unsigned, you should be able to find me at the Georgia Bigfoot Festival. But I think my favorite thing you said from the selling of Beau's books, because Beau's are actually horror books and the cover got redone, but the cover presently has a bare-chested man on it, and I think are these like Twilight is my favorite thing that happened.
yeah, one little kid is like, "Is that Twilight?" I went, "Yes, but better."
So
But my favorite was the lady who came up and just said, "Hey, do you all have any smut?" And I said, "Spicy werewolves right down in front." And she went, "Oh yes."
oh my God.
She's like, "I normally look around, but I've learned to just ask." And I'm like, "Yep, that's the way to do it."
There we go. There we
Yep,
go. I
so
love that.
so Beau is just dripping in money now. All
Yeah.
those royalties.
What are we talking about today?
Okay, all right. So we've been watching movies, right? We've been
Yes,
catching up
you
on.
keep making lists.
I make lists and all this, but this is one you had said you'd already seen, so we were able to skip it. But I want to talk about it because it's one of those. This is the epitome of Fortean study, right?
Okay.
But not only done as just a study of it. This is actually in practice. And Charles Fort was big on everything that didn't fit in the normal, right? So he was into ghosts, he was into UFOs, he was into psychics, he was into ESP, he was into hypnosis, he was into all these things. And so the government at one point, our United States government, was very interested in all these things. And it was right post World War II, right around Vietnam War. We didn't have a lot of success in Vietnam. So they were looking for new ways to become a new American army. And so they started deciding to train psychic warriors.
Okay.
And this became famously the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh, gotta love me some George Clooney. Love,
George
love,
Clooney.
love.
And this young guy named Ewan McGregor was in it as a reporter who stumbles on. He's in Iraq. He wants to get into Iraq during the Iraq invasion. He's trying to please get. He's a reporter trying to get anything in, and he discovers this odd guy, this special forces operator named Len Cassidy, who is George Clooney, and who's going in. And so he's just so excited to be able to go with somebody. But then as he starts learning, this guy, Len Cassidy, says, hey, I was trained as a psychic spy in the 80s. I was trained by a guy named Bill Django, was played by the great Jeff Bridges. And we formed the
Yes.
New Earth Battalion. And we are Jedi warriors. And I love that Ewan McGregor, who will later become Obi-Wan, is studying about Jedi warriors.
It's hysterical, and it's so funny that they called them that.
Yeah. And it starts with this general, lieutenant colonel, who's like staring at a wall, and it's played by the guy's the bad guy in the Avatar movie. I can't remember his name right now. But he basically is staring at a wall so intently, and then he tries to run through the wall because he's convinced he can phase through the wall, and then he clobbers himself. And then the movie immediately states, more of this is true than you realize. Right?
This is actually a true story?
There is more of it true than you realize, is the perfect way to describe it.
Okay.
So, it's based on a book by a reporter named John Ronson. And this is just kind of this comedy fantasy thing. And the book starts really, really funny and then takes a really dark turn towards the end.
Okay.
And the movie just kind of keeps it kind of lighthearted the whole way through. But John Ronson actually did stumble on this and decided, wait, this can't be true, right? These things can't be real. And he actually made a documentary called The Crazy Rulers of the Earth. And
Okay.
it is his descent into this world where he's finding these people who are still very actively doing this stuff in the civilian world now. And they're actually like hosting conferences and teaching people some of these techniques that they learned from the military. And so that's kind of where it started. And then he realizes how deep it goes and goes down the rabbit hole. And we are going to go down the rabbit hole. Are we ready for this?
Yes, I was been ready. I think I'm
Okay.
ready. I'm not at all. So, okay, I'm still at this was actually real phase. So got it.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
So first off, we kind of have to separate a little bit of fact from fiction, right? There was this new Earth army that they were making in this, and they had, the characters, but the characters changed their names, right? It wasn't the new Earth army. It was a army that was called Earth Battalion 1. And that was the handbook that the founder of this organization dealt with. Now, this is a guy named Colonel John Alexander. He was a special forces commander in Vietnam, and he spent decades after Vietnam promoting the use of psychics and remote viewers for national security. Now, do you know what a remote viewer is?
No, what is a remote viewer?
Okay, a remote viewer is a type of psychic that basically they get into a meditative state, trance of some sort, and they use that to spy on the enemy. Now, Boeing, which makes planes and all that, they were, a military contractor. They actually started experiments on this in the 1960s, and it just never really latched on, but they did have military money going into this. But by 1980s, the Army itself started researching this, and they had military applications and science applications, right? That was what they went into this. But I think they were pretty military bent because, all right, so they had 16 people that we know of being paid by the US government to study this psychic spying, 14 of which were military, 2 of which were for scientific purposes. Now, that's just the ones we know of, the operatives. These were the people who were actually trained in this. That's not talking about all the support personnel and all the other money and stuff. This is where, when you're going to pay your taxes this year, what do you think about how this is a project that was from 20 years ago, or I'm sorry, 40 years ago, and we're just now learning about it. And some even 20 years ago. What in 20 years are we going to find out that our money's being spent on now? They actually use some of this to say that 9/11 could have been predicted had we studied this harder.
What?
Yes, that we could have found some of these things. Had the psychic spies been reactivated, we could have stopped 9/11.
Okay, hold on. I need to go back. I need to go back a tick or 10 on this at this point. Because so they had all these people. Did they literally have any evidence of this working whatsoever?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, because the reason they started this, why would we even start this, right? The military, why would they even look into this? Because the Russians were doing it. They had a report that the Russians were doing it, and there could not be a psychic gap, right? It's like when we were here that the Russians are doing something, we have to double down on it. This goes back to our MK Ultra we talked about with the Polybius episode, where the government was doing secret government experimentations on drugs on people to see if they could use them to loosen their tongues and stuff. And they would basically buy hookers and drugs for people they wanted to spy on and see if it worked. But then sometimes we did it on our own agents to see if it would screw them up. And yeah, imagine that. Acid and LSD did screw them up. But the real guy, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Channon, he was really in to the New Age movement, right? He came back from Vietnam and he's like, I want to study this stuff. I need to study this. So the government basically gave him about $50 million a year to work with. And he basically hung around communes and going to psychic warrior school and becoming a shaman, becoming a medicine man, becoming all these things so that he could become a proper remote viewer, as well as training these men in non-lethal fighting. That was his big thing, non-lethal.
Hold on. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Warrior mind training.
Okay. So Russia was doing this. Did they have any success that we are aware of?
We don't know it actually worked. And we don't know Russia actually was doing it.
So we just heard they were doing this and we're like, suddenly, you know what we need to do? We need to do the same thing.
We need to do the same thing. Yep. Now, some of the things he was trying to do were actually some positive stuff. Like he was learning some ancient samurai techniques, and they actually started teaching these at Camp Lejeune as a possible treatment for PTSD. They have a $4 million initiative at the time, studying Reiki and transcendental meditation and bioenergy. The Air Force even put some money into looking into acupuncture for battlefield relief.
Okay.
Some of this sounds pretty, logical, that it's like, okay, some of this does help people, so let's see if it can help people. Now, the remote viewing, one of the things they were doing is they were trying to remote view, where they would basically send a spy psychically, astrally, to the enemy, and they would go into places that you could not go into. Like, you could go into a black room. We have some of those, for when we have those black box discussions, they call it, for the government, like some of these UFO disclosures where they can't do a proper public thing. They take them into a black room where nobody's allowed to record, nothing can be recorded, and no spy satellite can listen in. Well, what if you could remote view in? What if you could walk into that? So we were trying to do that to the Russians, and that was actually how we were supposedly looking for Osama bin Laden. We were looking for some of these other people. One of the people they did supposedly have success with was Manuel Noriega in Panama. They were able to find where he was hiding by using this. And supposedly.
Okay, but did they
In with working with regular intelligence as well.
oh my God, there are so many things I'm thinking right now, but
How many
continue.
layers, right? How many layers?
Well, how long did this go on for?
Decades.
See,
Decades.
that's the part that keeps throwing me, because
Yeah.
generally you have to have some kind of result, like
Right.
just something. It can be a small thing, but some
Yeah.
sort of evidentiary proof that this ridiculous escapade you are on actually will lead somewhere.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things he discovered, this Channon guy, he basically retired from the military in 1982. He did not serve in Iraq, but some of his sound techniques he did, that he was using sound energy to affect the brain and to affect people, to heal them and do all that. Well, the military took it and said, well, if you can use this to heal people, what if we did the reverse? And now we have sonic weapons. And you may think, okay, that sounds science fiction-y. That may, where we have used infrasound and things like that to test things. But the one thing that came out of this was something they did do to Manuel Noriega when he was locked in his compound. They would later do it on our own soil to the Branch Davidians, is they would torture them with sound. And they would sit outside their encampments and play strange music at all hours of night, or sounds of like bunnies being massacred and slaughtered, and pigs being slaughtered, and all these weird noises to try to drive people out of their hiding. Sadly, we would also use this in Afghanistan to torture people by playing the Barney song over and over again and all this stuff. And of course, that's what comes out of this, is we discover, oh, shiitake, we're doing this stuff. Now, the crazy thing also is they did learn that, oh, cannabis oil does work for healing. So we can give that, especially with PTSD people. So that's when the military starts actually prescribing cannabis oil to help people with PTSD. Now, it was not a paranormal force. That is what they say. Is they all love to say this was not a paranormal force. It was a think tank, and that they were trying to figure out the real possibility of nuclear war and how to survive and how we will do the unthinkable with these awakened warriors. And they will be able to be players in the new network of society that would form after this. We're getting into this. I mean, oh my gosh, it begins to just start going even crazier, because you ready?
Okay. So no, hold on. We have to take another pause here. We have to take a what the actual fuck pause for a moment here.
Yep.
So I understand the sound thing. We've talked about that before. Me and you have talked about that, because it is absolutely a way to hurt people. I mean, people have done it with like sound, and even I know scientifically I have to use that word while we're talking about this stuff because this is a shit show. Scientifically, sound, even on levels that we're not consciously hearing, can affect things. Like, that they've shown that it can shatter glass. So imagine what it's doing to your brain if it can do that, that sort of thing. I get all that. And I get the acupuncture. I've done acupuncture myself. Acupuncture can do amazing things by a skilled practitioner, all this stuff. But really, really where we are on all this?
Jim Channon, who founded this, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says, look, this is when I intended was none of this, right? Drugs were never part of this. This was just healing and stuff like that. Do these things. And so he put out the instruction manual for the Earth Battalion. He declassified it himself, despite the military objecting it. And so you can actually find that. And I've read the 150 pages of it, which is pretty crazy. It's for peace technology, right? And one of his things was he basically had the warriors wearing speakers and it would be playing like indigenous music and words of peace when they come paratrooping in. They would hold like some symbolic animal like a lamb or a dove
Wow.
doing its peace. And they would have all kinds of spiritual symbols on their uniforms because they were warriors of peace, right? Now, one of the weapons they had was a thing that became known as the Predator. It looks like a little piece of plastic shaped like a pea, and this was in the movie, and it is a real thing, and you can buy them on eBay or even Amazon. They are a little weapon that you put in your hand and use it as a grip, and you can actually disable people with this. It is like you can use it to grip somebody with it, and it just punches into their hand and it just stops the nerves and all this stuff. It's pretty crazy, but if it was left on the battlefield, no one would know what the hell it is. That was the whole point of this thing. Now the most major thing is, could they kill somebody with telepathy?
Correct.
The answer is probably not. Supposedly, one of the soldiers in this organization, the one George Clooney is a mix of like 3 different characters they've merged into this one. He supposedly, they were using goats instead of human targets, right? When they're training this stuff, because that's what the military does. We use goats for training a lot of things, sadly, but it was an active denial system, which was basically you would shoot a goat and practice medical techniques on it, right? That's how you would prepare for battlefield medicine. And this one guy, one of the real people, was named Colonel Alexander, and he can do cloud bursting. Do you know what cloud bursting is? That's where you stare at a
No, I
cloud
don't
long
know what
enough.
cloud bursting is. What the hell is cloud bursting?
All right. That's where you stare at a cloud long enough, you make it dissipate by staring at it
You
intently.
mean called science and wind, but you
Yeah,
think
but
you've done it.
no, they can make it happen before the science and women just by using their psychic energy. What was great, one of the wife of this Colonel Alexander was able to interview her at one point, and she said, "Well, it certainly helped during our cruise to Antarctica, where he was able to break all the clouds up. It was so we had sunny days the
Oh
whole
my,
trip."
oh my God, Mark, I need to
But
take a break.
well, hold on.
Oh
She
God.
swears that he never used his powers to kill a goat. But when we come back, we're going to talk about what other people said.
Okay, yeah. Gonna need a cleanser. Need a cleanser. Okay, here you go, travelers. Here's our sponsors.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travel's producer, Beau Lake. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold. or at linktree.com/Beau__lake.
The sweltering heat of the Florida sun breaks as a chill runs down your spine. A dark shadow looms from a nearby tourist trap. You didn't expect to find this kind of shade in Florida. If only there was some sort of travel guide to steer you through the spookier locales. Well, you're in luck, reader. Join author Mark Muncy and Carrie Schultz as they lead you through the darkest locations in the Sunshine State in creepy Florida. Available from History Press and at fine bookstores everywhere.
Okay, we're back. I do have to say though, because you just said something, Mark,
Yes.
offline, and it is so true. I get that we have to ensure that we can be safe as a country from things. I totally get that. And I get that technically research is never a failed, there's no such thing as a failed experiment because you learn from it.
Right.
However, when you just said this, which is we do not pay our teachers enough in this country. We do not offer enough things to assist certain members of our communities.
Yep.
And and you want to make sure people have, like veterans have a safe place to stay, especially because we know how prevalent mental illness is, especially from combat veterans and stuff like that. And they were spending money for decades to stare at goats, to use mental abilities. Like I just go, how would that have given us someone up? And at what point in time do you go, maybe we take this funding and pay for kindergartens for children?
Yeah. Well, I have lots of comments on that. I'm a staunch limited government guy, but just because when we find out how much money we spend on schools and how much of it actually gets down to the school, it's like, where did it all go before it actually gets down to the people who need it? That's where I have the problems. And that's where these projects like this get swept, are in that middle mass where the money sounds like, oh, let's do this. And then suddenly it gets filtered into all these sub projects. And then it doesn't actually get to, oh, the soldier on the battlefield who needed that extra armor or something else,
Yeah.
We're there. But anyway, that's another discussion, and we're not a political show. So, but we are talking some politics here because it's so crazy. So, the 1st Earth Battalion's manual makes very clear winning the psychological battle is the biggest part of the struggle, right? Knowing is half the battle. Knowing is 90% of the battle to the 1st Earth Battalion. If your opponent believes that you can kill them with a look, then they are already halfway to being defeated. That's the quote. And many martial arts masters know that by, just kind of showing their students what would be tricky moves, then they've already convinced them that this is the value of discipline, right? This is what I wish I could learn. And maybe it's not quite, you want to take everything at face value, but there is a report that this Colonel Anderson was able to sit in a room and he was able to stare at a goat and it started bleeding, started crying, and eventually it fell over where its heart had stopped and died.
Aren't there goats that do that anyway?
There are fainting goats and stuff like that, but this one died. Literally, his heart exploded. And there are witnesses. There were literally cameras. Witnesses said this happened. And so that's when they went all in. The government's like, oh my God, this is it. We have found our holy grail weapon. We have a warrior monk. Let's do this.
So, not to be the bearer of bad news, but did anybody actually do an autopsy on this situation?
That's classified.
Oh, okay. So we didn't actually check to see if the goat died.
Oh, wait, that's the problem with this. This is so much of this has been declassified, but so much of it is still classified. The CIA cleared a lot of this, but then a lot of it didn't.
Well,
right?
I think is the government probably with what is in these records, and I don't mean from a
Yeah.
ooh, this is dangerous, but more of an, ooh, you look like idiots for funding this for so long.
Yeah.
I would keep this all classified as well.
And the problem is it's so many different departments were involved in this. Like it started with the Stanford Research Institute, and then it became the Defense Intelligence Agency in partnership with the SRI. And then somehow it got transferred to Fort Meade in Maryland. And now later on, it became known as they're all these random names. We love these government names where they're just basically two random words put together.
Yeah.
And that's how they come up with these names. And one of the documents came out, and then it turned into thousands of documents, was one that had a better name, Project Stargate. And
Stargate,
that one,
like the TV show.
that was in from the 80s, and that was the one that was using it for remote viewing. And one of the remote viewing projects into that, they actually were spying on Mars.
I'm sorry.
In the past.
Past
Yeah.
Mars.
One of the remote viewers went to Mars astrally, and then was able to transport himself into the past because he found a city buried on Mars. And then they asked him, well, can you go back in time to study this city? And he did. And it's one of the unclassified documents, as he went back, and when there was a society on Mars, and he was able to talk to the aliens because they did not see him as a threat because he was a projected creature from a future world.
Oh my God, my head is exploding right now in a very painful way.
Now that government program ended in 2014, so that one's no longer being funded.
Okay, but how long did it go on for?
From 1995 to 2014.
So 11 years we paid.
No, I'm sorry, I had that wrong. That was the previous incarnation. Project Stargate went on till from 1978 to 1995. And then the second project went from 1995 to 2014.
I would like my money back. That is what I have to say regarding this situation. I would like a full and unlimited refund of all my monies, please.
All right, so I would like to also say that this could be preternatural stuff we don't understand. I think the consensus is that some things exist and some things are not. And somewhere in here lies the truth, right? So there are statistical errors throughout all these papers that were declassified. There are kinds of crazy things that are like, wait a minute, why did this not happen the exact same when the next guy did it? Or the next guy did it? Or the next guy did it? And, if we actually did one day find ESP and could prove it, can we prove that each person does it the exact same way? Right? I mean, we have.
Again, I am not, I do not have a problem with obviously looking into stuff and things like that. But I think creating a whole government thing and spending this much time and energy, because it's more to me like there are certain people, like I do believe in psychics. It's preternatural. Like I do believe different people have different mental abilities, right?
Right.
And we're not going down completely this rabbit hole, but I'm uncasing that there is a rabbit hole underneath what I'm saying. My problem with this is that instead of like going and having somebody observe the people that may or may not be able to do a function and do like correct research on several people doing this sort of thing, shamans, sages, witch doctors, whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm.
And observing the results and just cataloging it with an unbiased view of it. Instead, they spent probably millions to stare at goats to kill them.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Cool.
This first Earth Battalion, right? Several members have moved on to other organizations.
Okay.
Right? One of them happens to be a company called PSI, PSI, and they are actually a public speaking organization that goes to teach you about using like a warrior code and a spirituality code in your business and how to form like a monk style attitude in the world. One of the
Okay.
other companies is one of those that is under the company that was formerly called Blackwater. And they actually work for the government. And we don't know what they do. They are a super secret organization that we're not sure, but the government does give them money. It's so wild that these things are still going on, right? That
Yeah.
there is more to this than meets the eye. So now let's get back to the goat, right?
Yes.
So
Let's do that.
this is one of the quotes was, so at first glance, the shed at the fort could have been anywhere in the world. 30 goats were happily munching on hay and staring at blank concrete walls of the stable. Every few minutes, one of the goats would stop chewing, begin gasping for breath, and then nonchalantly carry on eating. Nothing had happened. In an equally nondescript room next to the shed, the young sergeant in combat fatigues was staring at the goats through a window fitted into a one-way glass. And two of the soldiers and a general were anxiously watching the sergeant. Every so often, the general would shake his head slightly and a worried look would cross his face. And then the young sergeant took another sip of coffee, put it down, and something extraordinary happened. Goat number 17 let out the silent bleat, keeled over, and died. The general's quote, "My God, it works."
Okay. So
That's the military report.
I got it. I just want to point out that he said let out a silent bleat.
Right.
A bleat is a noise.
Yes.
So there is no such thing as a silent bleat. That is not a thing, official government report man. Oh, I have so many words that I'm thinking of this, but I'm just going to be nice and stop talking because.
All right. Well, the one thing is Ronson, who did the documentary on this, he actually goes into interviews with all of the members that he can find of this organization that are still around. And he gets to
Okay.
talk to them. Some of them are still around to this day. I've talked to a couple of them over the years at different events, just bumping into them going, "Oh, hey, I know your story." They are all still convinced that the Russians are doing this and still studying this. Even
Okay.
though Russia ran out of money and had to rebuild completely, he thinks this is one of the projects that they have reinvested in. What was cool about the manual, right? So I got one of the manuals and read it in the day, which was pretty cool. And it's basically learning how to build yourself up, right? And here's the quote from the manual. "Armies can be both instruments of destruction and the guardians of humanity's evolution. The warrior monk's role is to protect the possible and to nurture the potential, to generate workable international solutions to defuse the nuclear time bomb. We must wisely use energy, enforce ecological balance, assist with appropriate technological expansion, and above all, strive for human development in ourselves and in others. I invite each of you, soldier and civilian, to become an evolutionary and to adopt the code of ethics of the warrior monk." So they didn't call it Project Jedi.
Okay. I mean, there's some. God, I just
Hey.
have too many emotions on this particular situation at this time. I mean, I agree that there's definitely some moral, and ethical things.
I agree. We got to harmonize our Earth.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Our first allegiance should be planet Earth, right? I kind of like the planet we live on. I'm with Elon. We got to get off here because at some point our sun is going to go out, and it's not going to go out lightly. It's going to go big, and we got to be gone by then. Now, I know it's not, hopefully not in my lifetime, hopefully not in, generations of lifetimes, but it is going to happen. We got to be out here. We got to be on Babylon 5 at some point. right?
No, that's true. But see, that's science. That's not, though, using our brain to try to, okay, I can't even say these things out loud. It's just
You
making,
just gotta put yourself in a flow of a fearless state of consciousness, and so that you can be a warrior monk and work your way, make your chakras up to a path of oneness, right? That's what this is all about, and that's what his book was all about. Now, he says this was the actual training manual for the government. No, we can find no actual evidence that this was the manual. This guy did write this, and it is available. He gives it out at his events and stuff.
we are just going to have to share links to this movie, this documentary, this book if we can.
Yeah. And Ron Johnson, now don't confuse, this was the Crazy Rulers of the World. He did a second documentary called Secret Rulers of the World. And that one goes into all our fun conspiracy theories, including where the Russian royal family, they were actually reptilians in human form, and that they have infiltrated all of society and secretly rule the world. Now, if this episode doesn't come out, we know what happened.
Okay.
So,
Well, nobody will know what happened because it won't have come out. So, the, oh, God, levels. That's all I can say. Levels at this point in time. I can't even, I just,
you have a problem with gorilla gurus? Come on.
Here's the thing. You know that I am a believer of many things.
Yes.
Part of the reason, travelers, I do this podcast is there's so much that I know that I don't know, and there's stuff that Mark knows that I don't know. But when just hearing about this, I have gone through the gamut of emotions, and I am still outraged we spent as much money as we did on this activity. That's where I landed,
honestly,
emotionally speaking.
Yeah, that is honestly where I have the issue, is that we spent tons on this, but yet we're not allowed to discuss UAPs. We're not allowed to discuss other things that would be much better spent money on. Ronald McGraw was one of the members of the 1st Earth Battalion, and he wrote a book called Mind Wars.
Okay.
Here's a quote that I actually do find fascinating. I have the capacity and therefore the duty to contribute to the development of myself, my associates, and our planet simultaneously now. I will organize a self-supporting high commando group that will create and perform evolutionary breakthrough actions on behalf of people and the planet. One people, one planet. I will then pass on this concept to others who are capable of generating further self-organizing commando teams. I will await the time when my group can connect naturally with others at higher and higher levels of awareness and performance, and we won't be a National Guard, we will be the Natural Guard. I like that a lot. I thought that actually, I can get behind that, right?
Yeah. That I'm 100% on board with. Everything else, no.
Now, in that book, he has 9 levels that you train yourself up. And as long as you reach 6 of those, you can call yourself a master.
Okay. Well, we'll put links to all of this stuff. So, travelers, if you decide you want to go down the rabbit hole and listen to this, great. If you have any listener stories you want to share with us, great. I feel like I want X's feedback.
He may be a warrior monk.
I guess that's entirely possible. Question mark.
I am all for thinking outside the box when it comes militarily. We have to do that. I've been recently watching Apple's Masters of the Air, because I've watched Band of Brothers 1,000 times. I've watched The Pacific 1,000 times. This is their new one, and it's incredible. And some of the things we learned, diversionary tactics we learned during World War II, could have saved so many more lives. And I had hoped they'd use some of that in these, Masters of the Air, and we just didn't. We were trying precision bombing during the day, and there's a reason the British bombed at night, because it was safer. We bombed during the day because we wanted to hit the right things and not hit the bad things. but that cost us so many more lives. And so if we can come up with some way to stop a bad guy without having to go in and do terrible things, yeah, I'm all for that. But I'm also, let's do it logically here. You know, there's other ways.
Yeah, and there are other things we can invest money in that will bring about a more symbiotic society. So let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the imagery of paratrooping into enemy territory, holding a goat or a baby lamb, and playing peaceful music. But if I'm paratrooping into enemy territory, I would like a gun.
Yeah.
I think I think if a big gun is also intimidating too. So
Yes.
I can kill you with a look, but I can also kill you with this.
I also think paratrooping into any situation automatically puts people on their guard. People don't go, oh, I wonder why they're dropping into our land. I wonder if they're here in peace. Those are not the first thoughts that come to anybody's brain in these situations.
Mm.
Sorry, that's not how it works. There's some immediate logical things that just make these ideas completely wacko cuckoo crazy.
The
So,
great Susie Azard's, the first transvestite brigade, where they paratroop in with makeup and everybody's like, oh, they look fabulous. Oh, they've got guns. Quick, everybody get.
no, see that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that would throw you off. You would think maybe they're a danger, but then when you saw how fabulous they were, you'd be like, oh, they're not a danger. Oh, wait, no, they have guns. Okay, they are a danger. See, that's the bait and switch of the situation, I think. So with that, Mark, please take us away.
Well, thank you so much, Patreons, for putting us the money to help make this happen. Thank you to our sponsors, as always, for helping keep this ship on the sea here. And we thank you so much as we continue our spiritual journey into learning all these mindfulness things. We will be happy to point out that Paranormality Magazine is available, paranormalitymag.com, where you can vote for us as one of your top 10 podcasts if you want to hear more crazy stuff like that. We like being on there. Always enjoy being on that list. We also want to thank all of you who showed up at our events. Thanks again, and we'll see you at some of the others. Go to eerietravels.com and see where we're going to be next on this wonderful journey, where our next travels will take us. Now, all that said, I believe it is time that we apply our spiritual knowledge, raise our awareness levels, dive deep into the hardcore levels of our souls so that we can master ourselves and bring real change to the world that will create peace and sustainability for generations to come. And I will see you on the other side.